Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may joining us from today. My name is Renald Vial. I work as a tax policy advisor at the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes. Over the past few years, beneficial ownership transparency has gained relevance, and for good reason. Why does it matter? Tax evasion, corruption, money laundering, and illicit financial flows all thrive in the shadows of opaque ownership structures. And when companies, foundations, partnerships, and trusts are layered across multiple jurisdictions, the true beneficial owners, those pulling the strings, become hidden. Adding mechanisms like bearer shares, nominee shareholders, and shell companies, and it becomes even harder for authorities to track down who really owns and controls assets. So where do we stand today? The good news is that we have seen real progress. More and more jurisdictions have implemented or are in the process of implementing beneficial ownership registers. Many have already started using bioinformation in tax audits and investigations, uncovering hidden assets and reclaiming lost revenue. So what's next? For all jurisdictions to fully benefit, we need stronger capacity building efforts and targeted assistance in implementing effective BO frameworks. And that's exactly what today's session is about. So we'll discuss the critical role of beneficial ownership transparency in the fight against tax evasion. We will highlight the support available to jurisdictions looking to enhance their BO frameworks. And most importantly, we will hear directly from jurisdictions that have implemented BO transparency measures and are seeing the benefits firsthand. So let's dive in and let me introduce our speakers. We will have Mr. Adel Chouari, General Director of the National Register of Enterprises from Tunisia, Ms. Sandra Arizmendi, Head of the Exchange of Information on Request Unit from the Tax Administration Service in Mexico, and Mr. Nohazli Sham Maksoud, Tax Auditor in the Strategic Compliance Unit from the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia. So we are delighted to have you all here with us today. I will start with a brief presentation on beneficial ownership transparency, a tool in the fight against tax evasion and fight against illicit financial flows. And by peeling back the layers of opaque ownership structures, we can expose those who truly control assets and prevent them from hiding behind shell companies, nominee directors, and complex legal arrangements. Central beneficial ownership registers play a key role in this effort, ensuring that tax authorities and law enforcement have fast and reliable access to ownership information. I will also highlight how the Global Forum is actively supporting jurisdictions through technical assistance, helping them design and implement strong beneficial ownership frameworks that deliver real impact. So let's look at a real-world challenge faced by tax auditors. Here you have a case study. In country A tax auditor is reviewing company A, which has been reporting consistent deficits. What is the goal of the tax auditor? To understand why we have such deficits. By using domestic sources, the auditor can access financial records, legal ownership details, contracts, invoices, and payments. But there is a problem because company A is linked to company B located in country B in a foreign jurisdiction. So what is missing? Domestic records don't reveal company B's ownership, activities, or financial information. The auditor knows transactions exist between the two companies, but has no way to assess if there is profit shifting, transfer pricing manipulation, or hidden beneficial ownership. So what is the solution? If you have a discussion between the tax auditor and his manager, this discussion should highlight the role of international cooperation and exchange of information between tax authorities. Without it, auditors are left in the dark, and risks like tax evasion and illicit financial flows go undetected. If we keep the same situation and we still have our tax auditor in country A, reviewing company A, he has access to domestic records. As I said, legal ownership documents and financial statements. But there is a blind spot. Company A has transaction with company B in country B, and without exchange of information, there is no visibility on who owns or controls it. So to dig deeper, the auditor requests information from country B and learns that company B is fully owned by company C in country C. So a second request to country C reveals the real surprise, that company C is entirely owned by Mr. A, the very owner and manager of company A under audit. So as you can imagine, this complex structure suggests possible profit shifting, hidden beneficial ownership, or tax avoidance schemes. I remind you that company A is in constant deficit. So what is the takeaway here? Without international exchange of information, the crucial link would have remained hidden, showing just how essential transparency and cross-border cooperation are in tackling tax evasion and ensuring fair taxation. So I talk about who controls a company. This is where we have the notion of beneficial owner. What is a beneficial owner and why does it matter? Simply put, a beneficial owner is always a natural person, the one who ultimately owns, controls, or benefits from a legal entity or arrangement. And this means, first, they own or control a company, either directly or through other entities, like we just saw in the previous case study. They influence key decisions and they can impose their will on the entity. And there can be multiple beneficial owners for a single entity. For legal arrangements, like trusts, for instance, the settlor, trustee, protector, and beneficiaries are considered beneficial owners. So if any party involved is a legal entity, we must look beyond the layers. We must have a look-through approach to identify the actual individuals in control. And as you know, opaque ownership structures allow illicit financial flows, illicit financial activities like tax evasion, money laundering, corruption to thrive. So that's why international standards like the FATF recommendations or the standard for exchange of information emphasize identifying the real individuals pulling the strings behind legal entities. So I just mentioned two standards, the FATF, Financial Action Task Force standard for anti-money laundering purposes, and the exchange of information standard. The FATF standard mandates that jurisdictions must ensure adequate, accurate, and up-to-date beneficial ownership information is available in a timely manner. And to achieve this, countries should rely on a combination of mechanisms rather than a single source. And this multi-pronged approach includes, first, the entity approach. Companies must collect and maintain information on their beneficial owners and provide it when required. Then you have the register approach. Beneficial ownership data is held by public authorities like tax authorities, financial intelligence units, or company registries. And while a central register is not mandatory, jurisdiction must ensure that authorities can efficiently access reliable information. You can have alternative mechanisms. Countries may implement other solutions that offer the same level of access and accuracy. And we have supplementary measures. Additional sources such as regulatory filings, stock exchanges, and financial institution records strengthen the system. This is for the FATF standard. What about the Global Forum reviews? What have we learned from Global Forum peer reviews? Empirical data shows that jurisdictions using a combination of approaches, particularly when integrating AML CFT frameworks, achieve better results in ensuring beneficial ownership transparency. So what's the key takeaway here? The more sources of information available, the stronger the system and the harder it becomes for illicit actors to hide. So today, tax authorities face significant challenges due to opaque ownership structures designed to conceal beneficial owners and facilitate tax evasion. How does this happen? First, you can have layered ownership. Companies are owned by other legal entities or stacked across multiple jurisdictions, making it difficult to trace the real owners. You have anonymity tactics. Bearer shares allow ownership to change hands without leaving a trace, while nominee shareholders act as front figures, masking the true controllers. You also have professional intermediaries, lawyers, notaries, and tax advisors may create and manage these structures, sometimes exploiting professional secrecy laws to shield information from authorities. And you have legal arrangements. Trust and other legal vehicles separate legal ownership from actual control, often remaining unregistered and unregulated, further complicating investigations. So what is the result of this? You have a wave of complexity that hinders tax enforcement, facilitates illicit financial flows, and erodes public revenue. How to deal with tax risk? To effectively combat tax risks, we need a multi-layered approach that enhances transparency, enforcement, and international collaboration. So how do we achieve this? First, we have international cooperation. Exchange of information agreements and tax treaties enable authorities to access crucial data across borders. You have the common reporting standard, helps track financial flows. Then you have beneficial ownership transparency with laws requiring companies to declare their beneficial owners. That improve oversight and make fraud detection easier. You have central registers, allowing authorities to efficiently track and monitor ownership structures, and multi-agency cooperation ensures a holistic approach to enforcement. As you can see, ensuring effective beneficial ownership transparency isn't just about setting standards. It's about empowering jurisdictions with the right tools and expertise. And that's why capacity building is a core priority for the Global Forum. So if you look at the training and knowledge sharing, since 2016, we have conducted 32 training sections on beneficial ownership requirements, training over 3,000 officials worldwide. In 2020, we launched an e-learning course with the Asian Development Bank, providing accessible training on beneficial ownership and its role in tackling tax evasion. We also have bilateral technical assistance from 2020 to 2023. The Global Forum provided customized support to jurisdictions, 26 jurisdictions in 2024, helping them strengthen their legal and practical framework. And we also developed the Building Effective Beneficial Ownership Frameworks Toolkit with the Inter-American Development Bank. Its second edition, released in May 2024, includes the latest FATF and Global Forum peer-reviewed developments, and it's available in French and Spanish as well on the Global Forum website. Before I close, we want to express our sincere gratitude to the donors of the Global Forum's capacity building program. Their support is essential. Without it, none of this work would be possible. And thanks to their contributions, we are able to train officials, provide technical assistance, and strengthen beneficial ownership framework worldwide. So now it's time to give the floor to our participants. Let me introduce you to Mr. Adel Chouari, General Director of the National Register of Enterprises of Tunisia. Tunisia launched in 2019 its new central register of beneficial owners, which requires all businesses to identify their beneficial owners and to report that information every year to the National Register of Enterprises. Mr. Chouari, please share with us Tunisia's journey to the transparency of beneficial ownership information.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning, depending on where you are. I'm honored to be able to share the Tunisian experience when it comes to the implementation of a beneficial owner registry. Of course,
Estoy encantado de compartir con ustedes la información sobre el beneficiario final que inició hace 6 años, en el 2019, en febrero de 2019, para ser preciso.
From a registry that dated back to
Este registro
1890, so of course it's in its new version. This registry used to be handled by the Ministry of Justice. Now it's become an independent authority that depends on the head of the government, and it's been extended to other economic entities. The registry used to only cover societies and companies and traders,
sobre
so
los
there
artesanos,
was no organizations. But in 2017, we were assessed, and Tunisia was put in
el que
the
estemos
list
en la lista gris
for
con una
companies
amplia
that don't comply
demografía
with the TATF standards in terms of fight against money laundering. So we were asked to modify our approach,
Esto ha podido
including
modificar el
the
texto que se tiene en los
framework
registros
around our
comerciales.
company registry. We went to court,
Un simple registro básicamente con el
and we
Ministerio
went to
de
the Ministry of
Justicia.
Justice, and we changed the mandate of this registry. And because the mission of this registry was going to change, it became an autonomous entity, but working, of course, it's a governmental entity, and it is therefore working under the umbrella of the Tunisian government. And this mechanism has allowed us to extend the scope of this registry, because we no longer only record companies, we also include liberal professions. So I'm talking about doctors here, lawyers, notaries, but also craftsmen. And in this registry, we also have to register organizations, be they for-profit or non-profit. So it could be sports organization. There's also contracts on guarantees that are supposed to be submitted. Anything related to asset securities.
Il englobe un peu tout.
And companies are supposed to declare their business assets, for instance. And so we have this centralized also beneficial owner registry now. And the government has understood that the best place for this was to put it under the umbrella of the National Business Registry. So this is where the framework for beneficial owners is working. This ensures reliability of data, accuracy of data, and the collection of this information. And this has allowed us to come out of this grey list in 2020. And we're currently going through the second review, 2025-2026 review period. So we're keeping this momentum. And we should not be on the grey list anymore because we've made a lot of progress since 2019 up until now. If you wouldn't mind showing the next slide. Why did we choose to work this way? Well, because we wanted to centralize all the economic entities operating on the Tunisian territory and create a unique identification number, because in the past there were so many economic entities and so many ID number. They had a customs identification number, one for taxes, etc. Now we have only one single identification number, allowing us to trace data across the different databases. Now, of course, we want to work on making this data reliable through interoperability or connection of databases, but also through of a compliance system within this registry in order to make sure that these entities comply with our registration updating of data. Because at the registry, so we give a registration number to a new entity, but we also record updates of documents, including financial statements of companies. And this obligation has allowed us to implement a compliance system, which has allowed us, amongst others, to check, to verify the actual existence of the economic entity or the company through different means, including third parties that are interconnected in our database. And above all, the registry is a one-stop shop. And it's a great way to have financial, legal, economic information on different entities and ensure transparency of economic and financial flows, and to improve trade justice and improve the economic landscape by reducing fees, increasing data. Now, why have one centralized registry? So sometimes you have the acronym BO for beneficial owner, but because we speak French in Tunisia in the administration, we also use Arabic, but sometimes you'll have different acronyms here. But for the beneficial owner centralized registry, of course, the goal is to be compliant with international standards when it comes to the fight against terrorism and illicit financial flows. Secondly, it's about implementing a compliance system for declaration, because before 2019, we didn't have a compliance system. We didn't have one system that could allow us to follow up on the updates of the information. We now have a system in place that allows us to have better traceability. This way, we see whether we need to sanction companies with administrative sanctions or even legal sanctions. So currently, administrative sanctions are either a financial fine But we could also simply suspend them, and after the suspension, we could also take the company to court if they're not in compliance with our requirements. Third element, third added value is that it contributes to the transparency of beneficial owner systems through exchange of information. Right now, we are currently interconnected with different public databases in order to verify the entity of the identity of the people when it's a person, or of the company when it's a Tunisian entity, of course. It's still a little bit difficult to verify information about foreign people and foreign companies. But as you said, a beneficial owner is a natural person, but sometimes you have different layers with different legal entities that own different legal entities. You have different layers, and it's sometimes difficult to identify whose role is the role of the different people. So the financial Tunisian entities, the banks, the insurance companies are constantly looking at our databases. They're all using it. They're checking different documents whenever need be. When they have a doubt, they can ask questions if they have questions about money laundering and financing of terrorism. They check the existence of the beneficial owner, and they ask if they could have access to different reports, and including the report on the declaration on beneficial ownership. This way, the central banks and all the different entities have access to this information. And as I said, it contributes to the state's efforts when it comes to the fight against money laundering and financing of terrorism. This way, the government is compliant with tax requirements, because we also have tax situations that are now better monitored. And if a company does not comply with its tax obligations, the state can decide to suspend the company's activity and can suspend its existence in the registry if a company does not comply with its obligation over a period of 3 years.
When to declare your beneficial ownership. So to begin with, at the time of registration, so as soon as you've created your company in Tunisia, systematically, all entities are subject to the declaration of beneficial ownership. This is something that is completely done online. There are no paper documents that need to be filled in. So you can be at home, you can be wherever you want on the globe, and you can register your beneficial ownership. You will have to create your file, and then you'll have other information that will need to be provided when declaring the beneficial ownership. Either you can do this online, or you can come in to the office to do so. In order to ensure that the data is reliable and also sustainable, it is important to update the information. But when do you update the information? Obviously, anytime that we have a change of capital, we could have capital increase, capital reduction, and it would be important at this point to update the information with a new declaration of beneficial ownership. If ever we have updates of partners or shareholders, if we have a transfer of shares, a change of address, or even mergers or demergers of companies. These would be the different moments at which you would have to update your information regarding beneficial ownership. We, on an annual basis, tend to receive about 15,000 declarations to register beneficial ownerships, and most of them are businesses that are actually updating their information. I would say that out of the 50,000 requests that we have, because we have a change in capital or any of the other reasons that I gave, when we have these two declarations, we've got about between 50 and 30,000, as I mentioned, each year in our database. The rate is relatively high, especially if we compare this to 2019-2020. We've moved from about 30 to more than 60% of businesses that are declaring beneficial ownership. For those who are not doing so, they are exposed to different administrative and legal sanctions that could be implemented, as well as them being suspended from the National Register. Therefore, it is important to understand when and how to declare beneficial ownership. Our system started in 2019, and since we have been trying to work with a digitalized system and a system that is based on interconnectivity and interoperability. Interconnection or interconnectivity because we work hand in hand with about 20 or so public databases, and interoperability because we are able to recover data from the source, which means that if there is a return or a declaration that is filed within another system, we're able to cross-check whether this data is genuine and authentic, as well as the authenticity of the person's identity. We are able to access the National Citizen Identity Register to check the name, the date of birth, the address, all of the information pertaining to the person and their identification. We also have our colleagues from the Directorate General of Taxes. We work hand in hand because we actually work in real time with them. Our databases are joined in real time so that we can cross-check once again the data that we're receiving with the data that is held by the Directorate General of Taxes. Be we talking about legal persons or natural persons holding businesses and those who have made the declaration. We benefit from this service with the Director General of Taxes. We have fiscal and tax information coming to us in real time as soon as there is a status change or an amendment made to the database. In a nutshell, there you have who we work with. That said, we did not stop there. We went one step further. We also realized over the course of the past 5 years that there are other things that need to be done. For example, we have a number of dormant businesses. These businesses have not been running or haven't been modified for the past 3 years. We've been able to identify them, to quantify them, and we will be putting forward a draft bill to the Parliament to introduce an automatic deregistration for failure to file a beneficial ownership declaration or amending deeds. This is something that will be done systematically when a company fails to comply with the BO declarations. In addition to this, we want to ensure that people are updating the database. Therefore, we want to look at introducing spontaneous annual data update declarations in order to update data. This spontaneous declaration will also be subject to local sanctions if ever businesses weren't to comply. Therefore, businesses are going to have to not only declare annually, but if they don't do so, they will be subject to administrative sanctions. We're also going to propose a suspension from the register for failure to pay tax or make social security declarations. Therefore, if we have a company that is not complying for 3 successive years, they will be suspended from the register. We have also implemented an investigative unit because we get so much information coming in, and therefore we're going to try and use artificial intelligence in order to generate data, be this financial data through our financial results or legal data, which is available in the different minutes coming from our economic entities. In a nutshell, I don't think that I have that much time. I hope that I haven't gone over time, but you'll tell me if it's a country, just a little bit. Thank you very much, Mr. Chouari. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for sharing the journey on the beneficial ownership transparency. We congratulate Tunisia for the great work and the collaborative approach taken. Thank you very much. It's time now to move to our next panelist, Ms. Sandra Arizmendi. head of the exchange of information on the request unit from the Tax Administration Service in Mexico. Good morning. Thank you very much for being with us. It's very early in Mexico, so thank you so much for being here. Could you please share with us Mexico's success stories in raising additional revenue thanks to the use of beneficial ownership information?
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. I would like to present two success cases that have been published in our Transparency Report 2023. We are talking about cases. The first one is somewhat complex. All right. In Mexico, we had two entities, entity A and entity B. These entities merged and therefore, with that merger, created entity C. Entity C acquired from entity D a portfolio of intangible assets. Entity B was in jurisdiction X, and in order to verify these operations to see how they had been undertaken and carried out, the auditing team approached the information exchange unit and requested information from jurisdiction X. The information requested mainly was based on knowing who the beneficiaries of those assets were and verifying the legal address of said beneficiaries. Out of the information provided by jurisdiction X, we confirmed this transaction between entity C and D. However, jurisdiction X informed us that these entities were not related parties, but rather that the shareholders from entity D were found in jurisdiction I and represented entity E. Based on this situation, a second information exchange request was detonated with jurisdiction I in order to get more information about the end beneficiaries of those intangible assets. These intangible assets consisted in a portfolio of different patents, industrial secrets, and formulas. So for us, it was rather important to know who those beneficiaries were. Also considering that the Mexican taxpayer, in this case entity C, given that merger, was conducting deductions, was carrying out deductions of significant amounts. We're talking about 1.8 million euros approximately. Based on the information request, we once again requested information, as I said, on the beneficiaries of said assets. Based on the information provided by entity E, it was made known that at some point they were the legal owners of the patents, and there was a free transfer from entity D to entity E of those intangible assets. Afterwards, jurisdiction I informed that well, in this case, entity E was not the end beneficiary of said intangible assets, and that is why a third and fourth information exchange requests were issued with jurisdiction W and jurisdiction Z. Out of the information provided by these two last jurisdictions, it was made known that the owners of entity E were two trust funds, one found in jurisdiction W and the second one found in jurisdiction Z. If I remember correctly, jurisdiction W was owner of those intangible assets, and jurisdiction Z only managed those assets on behalf of the beneficiaries. In the end, it was made known that the beneficiaries of those trust funds were two Mexican taxpayers who at the same time were shareholders of entity C. So, given what we knew at the end about the beneficiaries, the auditors determined that these actions were inadmissible based on our income tax law, and therefore the deductions made were rejected, were denied, and that allowed the tax authority to collect a total of 546 million euros. The second case, published in our 2023 report, shared the story of Company A that was conducting operation with Company B in terms of ship rentals. Company A had statements for had deductions for up to 4 million euros. We requested information from Company B. It was recognized that although that company had been created under jurisdiction B, it did not operate under jurisdiction B. Therefore, the competent authorities also pointed out that Company B had not filed tax reports on income tax in jurisdiction B, and therefore the income that Company B had received had not been taxed. Along those same lines, jurisdiction B provided information on board meetings and other documentation for Company B, and it was made known that Mr. X was the owner of both entities. And finally, considering that income, as stated in our income tax law, was found in a preferential tax regime, that these expenses were non-deductible for entity A, and therefore the deductions were denied as well. These are both of our success cases, both published in our 2023 report. I believe that it was the sum of multiple factors which led to our success in both these cases, the support from our information exchange units in making the information sharing requests, especially in case number 1, which was quite complex, so that these requests were made clear and understandable for the jurisdictions towards which they were sent. Also, the close communication that was held amongst competent authorities from different jurisdictions, and clearly also the timely acting upon the situation based on the information provided. That would be all on my part. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra.
For sharing this experience. And once again, thank you very much for being here, because it's very early in Mexico. So we really appreciate your participation to this session. Thank you so much for sharing these very interesting case studies with some legal arrangements. So it's very much appreciated. Thank you. Now I will turn to our next participant, Mr. Norazlisham Maskoud, who is a tax auditor of the Strategic Compliance Unit of the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia. Good evening, Norazlisham.
Good evening, bonjour to all participants. Thank you, Mr. Renaud. Thank you also to OECD for the platform, and I'm glad to be here. Well, talking about the beneficial ownership, Malaysia's experience in using beneficial ownership informations to resolve tax cases have been a significant step forwards in strengthening our country's efforts to combat the tax evasions and also to improve tax compliance. When we're talking about beneficial ownership information, for us, for the past few years, we receive a lot of international cooperation regarding the data. Most of it is a common reporting standard in CRS, automatic exchange of information, AEOI, with in-house data and also in-house forensics. that improve our tax investigation and enforcement. This data actually help us with tracing our foreign asset. Let me share my slide first. So as I said before, this data help us in tracking to identifying the hidden assets and income, where we can undisclosed foreign asset held by Malaysian residents and trace the real individual behind offshore structures like shell companies or trusts are used to hide their income or asset. Through this international cooperation also, Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia can access the CRS data to identify individual or entity controlling the foreign account. Towards of this also, it increased our enforcement compliance also, where the Malaysian government has made progress in increasing transparency in company ownerships, especially for those involved in offshore business. Company must now report their ultimate beneficial owner to the Company Commission of Malaysia, which work with the RIBM to verify this information. I think this is in line with the mandatory entity approach that's being explained by Randolph before this under FATF. And then with this compliance also, the tax investigator can quickly identify who's control or benefit from offshore entity using beneficial ownership data. This is useful for complex cases involving international financial transaction. Furthermore, with this compliance also, it encouraging voluntary compliance because the company knowing that the ownership detail are disclosed and being checked, so that the taxpayer honestly report their income and assets. In Malaysia also, many tax evasion scheme involves complex offshore structure that hide ownership, often using layers of entity or nominee shareholders. Before this, Malaysia had difficulty uncovering the real owner behind the structure, but with beneficial ownership information, regulation, and CRS data, now we can identify the true individual behind the offshore entities. The controlling person that have the RB recovery review can enabling them to the discovery of previously hidden income in offshore account has led to the tax assessment on the income, including profit earned abroad but linked to Malaysian residents. While it has also become our case study in the real world impact, because while specific case detail are confidential, the general approach by the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia has been always a high net worth individual and offshore holding. Using the CRS data, Malaysia identified cases where wealthy individuals had large asset offshore and a complex ownership structure. Having said all this, by leveraging the CRS data, a common reporting standard data, it is improving our transparency in ownership structure and identifying beneficial owner behind offshore entity. The Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia also have made significant progress in combating tax evasion. This effort has not only enhanced compliance and tax enforcement, but have also led to the recovery of substantial additional revenue for the government, further contributing to Malaysia's overall economic growth and stability. So the next slide, I will share to you my real case. This is the case where I am engaged with the Tax Inspector Without Borders, where we first received the CRS, the international cooperation data exchange, automatic exchange of information. As we quickly do our intelligence reports and do our preparations and doing a raid. Towards the investigation, we found that these subjects have a trust in one of the non-jurisdictions countries in Europe. So we get information from the countries. No, there's no information given by us because we don't have jurisdictions there. So what we would do is we do a exchange of information requests to other countries that relate to the banks. These subjects actually set up a trust which is consists not a business, not an asset in the trust, but it is a insurance trust. Then we came out to know that this insurance trust is a revocable instrument that usually held by the wealthy person to hide their money. Towards the investigation also, we found out that such of the information like CRS and then also the automatic exchange of information is just like a key to open to many doors. This case led us to unreported income.
In that we have lost our colleague from Malaysia.
By having said all this, that all the information that we receive from the international cooperation is very crucial and very important for us to do our investigation and to improve our investigation in the future. And then as far as I'm concerned, that the case that I present to you just before this, that it shows that Malaysia are really keen to receive all the information, and we also will share all the information that we're given. Thank you very much.
In the meantime, we have a question in the Q&A. We have a question for Tunisia.
There is a question for Tunisia. I'll be asking it in French. What are the conditions to access the National Register? Can anyone access the National Register on the internet site? Yes, we have all of the data available on our website. You're able to, anyone can download the information. There is a slight fee to pay, but you also have access to minutes, to contracts, to financial data, and this all to really reinforce transparency. You don't really need any authorization. This information is available. It is only the beneficial ownership declaration that is available to the authorities and only to the authorities. So legal authorities or financial authorities or tax authorities. But this information regarding beneficial ownership is only available to these authorities. However, the rest of the information is available for a small fee on the website that is available 24/7.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Chouari, pour cette réponse.
Thank you.
As we wrap up for this insightful session, I want to take a short moment to express my deep gratitude first to the OECD for hosting this important event, to all our participants with the questions that make this event meaningful. A special thanks to our panelists, Mr. Chouari, Ms. Arizmendi, and Mr. Maksoud for sharing their expertise and experiences. And finally, to my colleagues at the Global Forum, this session wouldn't have been possible without your dedication and hard work behind the scenes. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the OECD Tax and Development Days.